Final Fight 2 spin-kicked its way onto your Super NES back in 1993. Developed and published by Capcom, Final Fight 2 is a direct-to-Super NES sequel of the arcade classic Final Fight. While the original Final Fight saw a ton of success in arcades before it finally made the jump over to home consoles, Final Fight 2 decided to skip the arcades entirely, likely due to the popularity of 3D games that started rocking arcades at the time. It got my attention at least, since I was a huge fan of the original game, but was pretty disappointed with the Super NES release that not only saw an entire character tossed to the side, but even worse, removed the co-op play that made the arcade game so much fun to play with a friend. Final Fight 2 was finally going to right all of those wrongs with a full cast of 3 characters and the return of co-op play, which sent me into a full-on kid fit when I read it in a magazine at the grocery store. But could Final Fight 2 ever live up to that amount of crazy kid excitement? Well, grab whoever's close enough to pile drive through a table, and let's see if Final Fight 2 can outmuscle the competition. The story in Final Fight 2 is pretty similar to the first game, just instead of Hagar's daughter getting kidnapped, Mad Gear's opted to go for Guy's sensei and fiancé. Apparently Guy could care less though, as he's off on some sort of training thing and can't even be bothered to go save her. Cody's also decided to take a knee this time as well, since he can't show up because he's on vacation. Yes, vacation. Hagar at least feigns some concern and runs off to do what Guy should be doing himself, along with newcomers Maki and Carlos. Maki's actually Guy's fiance's younger sister, and Carlos is, I don't even remember. He's mainly there just to look cool with a sword and anime poses, I guess. I'm sure he has some sort of connection to someone, but I mean it's Carlos, so who really cares? Together they run off on a globe-bashing adventure to put an end to Mad Gear and save the people that even the main character associated with them couldn't even be bothered to show up to save. That alone should probably tell you all you need to know about Final Fight 2, but we're just getting started. Once you're done shaking your head at the story, it's time to jam on the start button with your face and pick from one of the 3 available characters on offer. Mr. Hagar is still pretty much the same exact grumpy mayor that you know and love from Final Fight, as he lumbers slowly across the screen, waiting to pick up and slam the hell out of anyone that dares get close enough. Hagar also keeps his signature lariat for his super move, and it's just as satisfying here as it's ever been. So if you're wanting power over everything else, then Hagar's definitely your go-to. As mentioned before, Cody and Guy are sitting this one out, so you get 2 brand new characters to take Mad Gear on with. Carlos takes the place of Cody with his medium power attacks and speed, but unfortunately ends up being the most boring of the 3, since he's neither a pile-driving badass or doing cool ninja stuff like Maki is. He does at least have a neat sword, though keeping in line with no fun Carlos, he only whips it out for his super attack that's easily the worst of the bunch, with it having a super annoying pause before it actually connects with the enemies. Maki though, she's the real highlight, with her super fast moves and quick combos that easily makes her the best character to play with if you're gonna slog through the game by yourself. Her super also clears out a good chunk of enemies by using her tried and true handstand spin kick thing, though it does the least amount of damage out of all the supers. Overall, this is a solid group of brawlers, even if Carlos is so forgettable that even Capcom has managed to forget about him. But anyone that has a team of Hagar and Maki are gonna absolutely decimate this game, and have a pretty good time doing it. Select your character and you'll immediately get thrown into a stage to roam around in and beat up an endless supply of generic bad guys. Your moveset is the classic jam on one button until the person you're punching dies, with the only other button being a jump button to use as a quick escape from a group of enemies or to kick down some of the more annoying jumping enemies. Each character can also grapple enemies, so you can either punch them more or toss them across the screen, which is imperative for keeping enemies from doing unthinkable things to your backside. You do of course get that super move that I was talking about for each character, but just like the first game and many other brawlers, it depletes your character's life bar every time you use it, and this will suck no matter what game it's in. You'll be doing all of that stuff as you hop from location to location, but as mentioned, unlike the first game, you're going worldwide this time. Yes, Mad Gear's gone global in Final Fight 2, which means you'll spend less time fighting in grungy American back alleys and instead fight your way through grungy Asian and European back alleys. I actually prefer the settings in the original Final Fight more, as they just seem more gritty and game appropriate. Final Fight 2 does have a few pretty nasty looking sections to it, but then you're riding on top of a train for no reason and it just kind of feels out of place place in a Final Fight game. At least beating up Mad Gear's finest hasn't changed much, with most of them consisting of a variety of forgettable palette swap dudes that like to spend most of their time wandering off the screen where you can't actually hit them. A few enemies change up the game at times by just being more annoying to kill than the others, like these fat guys that try to electrocute you by running across the screen, but overall there's nothing in Final Fight 2 that's going to revolutionize things. That extends over to the bosses as well, and no, that's not a good thing. And these have to be some of the cheapest beat-em-up bosses that I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of cheap beat-em-up bosses. Some of these just take the cake. Most of them will take your entire life bar away with just a single hit, so you have to basically find ways to cheese them into vulnerable positions, and that's never a fun boss fight. It doesn't help that several of these fights have regular thugs running around them as well, making some of these boss fights just a big stupid mess. This is definitely an area where other beat-em-ups had progressed at least a little bit since the first Final Fight. But apparently Final Fight 2 forgot that this isn't a quarter-crunching arcade game this time around. One other thing Final Fight 2 unfortunately didn't get the message on was that making the stages longer doesn't actually make a brawler more fun. While the stages do offer a nice variety of scenes to beat your way through, you'll notice that these fights tend to last longer and longer due to the enemies getting more HP the further you get into the game. This by itself can make the stages feel longer than they should, but Final Fight 2 throws in the cardinal sin of having long-ass levels that seem to stretch on and on at times. And once you've fought your way through the 14th group of buff guy, skinny guy, and jumpy guy, you'll start telling yourself that you'll never play another beat 'em up again after your thumbs eventually heal from this ordeal. Playing with another person definitely helps speed this along, but if you're stuck playing alone, then you may want to grab whatever rapid-fire controller you can find just to make it through. Between that and the bosses, that's really about the worst I can say about Final Fight 2. Maybe the music could have been less awful, but it at least doesn't sound as bad as the first Final Fight on the Super NES, so I guess I'll give it a pass. And that's pretty much it for Final Fight 2. If I sound incredibly underwhelmed, it's because I am. There's really nothing too bad about Final Fight 2, it just never really does anything that makes it stand out, besides having the Final Fight name attached. You could literally remove the logo along with Hagar and you'd be left with a pretty generic brawler with some of the worst bosses ever put into a game. And since I had already hyped myself up way too much for this game as a kid being the next big thing, it really never had a chance with what's on offer here. Even playing it these days without any expectations, there's still nothing here that's in any way exciting besides having that much needed co-op gameplay added. A feature that every other beat 'em up on the Super NES had had for years. A feature that the first Final Fight should have had. Again, I don't think Final Fight 2 is a bad game, it's just okay. You could probably play a lot worse on the SNES, and God, I know you can because I've played a lot worse, but you could also play a lot better. By this time, there were so many great beat-em-ups on the Super NES and Genesis that you could throw your money at just about anything else and have a better time than what Final Fight 2 has on offer here. Now, Final Fight 3, that's a different story, and hopefully we can get to that one soon enough. But in the meantime, unless you're just a hardcore Final Fight fan that just has to play all of these, then I can safely say that you can go ahead and just do what Cody and Guy did and skip this one entirely.